So let's kick off the meeting here, and we'll start off by doing a roll call and remind everyone to say where you are physically at, as we are going to be virtual this evening. I guess before we do that, before I ask Heather to help us do that, this is Heather's last meeting. So I know she's going to introduce Chris. I guess technically this is Heather's last meeting, unless she really wants to continue participating, in which case you can certainly do so. But
we wouldn't want to inflict that on her.
We have an empty seat or two.
Yeah, we have a vacancy or two, right?
We do. Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right.
I moved.
Well, let's go ahead and start. Heather, could you help us with the roll, please?
Sure. Well, before we get into that, let me officially introduce Chris Cespedes, who's going to be your liaison going forward. And Chris comes to us from Miami, Florida, so is experiencing this wonderful weather now. And do you want to just say a few words about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to express my overall excitement to be a part of this task force and join it as its newest staff liaison. Some of my background is in biological sciences, and as Heather mentioned, I have 5 years of experience working prior to this with Miami-Dade County. So now I'm excited to work with all of you to address the challenges that the committee is facing.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
All right.
Where exactly are you in the city structure? Heather was a community engagement specialist in systems planning.
Yes.
Are you Chris in the same position?
Yeah. No, I'm the management assistant for the engineering department.
Oh.
And also works with systems planning, which is the unit that I came from.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for taking over. We will try and not drive you crazy, but we do really appreciate you and your work. So thank you. You'll be welcome to the team.
And I would like to say that I've rarely met such an outstanding administrative expert as Heather, and I thank her very much for all the fabulous work technically and diplomatically that she's done with us.
Yeah.
We're not the easiest group.
Well, thank you. All right, well, let's jump into roll call then. Councilmember Briggs.
Here.
And where are you?
Sorry, in Ann Arbor.
Stephen Borgstar.
Hi, present from Ann Arbor.
Great. Jennifer is absent. Mr. Dehoney is absent. Alan Haber.
I'm right here on the Old West Side, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Present.
Right. Sarah is absent. Jeffrey Henney.
Jeff Henney, and I'm in Ann Arbor.
Rita Mitchell.
I'm here in Ann Arbor.
Alice Ralph.
Yes, here in Ann Arbor.
Great. Frank Wilhelm.
Here further out on the west side from Allen, Beaver White School area.
And by the way, I'm on Stadium Boulevard, so.
Right.
Adam Zemke.
Here in Ann Arbor.
All right.
All right, sounds good. And because I am driving, I don't have the agenda pulled up in front of me. Are we on for the minutes or the agenda next?
Oh, sure. We are. Sorry, let me pull it. We are. Oh, I'm sorry. Just a moment, please. Okay, we are approval of agenda.
All right, so everyone has had a chance. Heather sent out the agenda a couple of days ago. It's been on Legistar for a while. Could we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Seconded.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor of approving the agenda as written, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Then we'll move on to the minutes from the last meeting. I know there was some discussion about one of the attachments. Are there any other questions regarding the minutes from the meeting in February?
No.
All right, we have a motion to approve
Move.
and a second.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, motion carries. And then I think we're going to public comment. Am I right, Heather?
That's correct. And we have
Right.
somebody with a hand up. We have many people with hands up. So we'll start with a person whose number ends with 326. You should be able to talk now.
Hello, this is Jeff Crockett. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay, I live at 506 East Kingsley, and I've been a resident of Ann Arbor for over 50 years. In 2019, I retired after a 45-year career in special education, spent in creating educational communities to help students with disabilities and developing numerous professional development programs. I know what it takes to create and support complex projects, and this explains why I volunteered to help with the development of the Commons. It is my opportunity to give back to Ann Arbor. Throughout my career, I've seen and carried out many activation plans. Trust me, the Council of the Commons activation recommendations presented here tonight is one of the best activation plans I have seen. Hats off to Adam Zemke, Rita Mitchell, and Frank Wilhelm. Due diligence would be the two words I would choose to describe this document. This work has been the result of extensive research about the experience of other communities that have developed urban parks and commons. In truth, if you were to calculate the investment time of all those who have worked toward helping to advocate for the commons over the past year, it would be well over 2,000 hours, an impressive investment in human capital. I would like to specifically thank Alan Haber. I'm on the Bicentennial History Subcommittee, which is creating a timeline of significant Ann Arbor events. During my research, I learned that Alan was the first president of the Students for Democratic Society in 1960, which means that he has been fighting for social justice and power for everyday people for over 62 years. Certainly, we have faced many challenges in activating the Commons, many of them systemic, such as the complicated and confusing permit process. Did you know that an applicant needs to apply 3 months in advance, or that the permit system specifies parks but not an urban plaza, or that it is necessary to get expensive event insurance that lower income folks can't afford, or that the application has to be completed offline in pen, and that needs to be scanned and attached to a stream a template? Can you believe that? The good news, though, is that I've met with Derek Delacourt, and he agrees that the application process is flawed. I'm going to be creating a frequently asked questions document to help make the process more accessible. Derek thanked me for the offer, and I am pleased to help. Finally, I am happy to report that we are nearing approval from the city for installing murals on 2 walls near the existing community gardens. We have secured $10,400 in donations to fund the work being done by well-known local artist Mary Tiefels. One of the donors, Larry Nissan, has generously donated funds to do murals in a variety of downtown locations. And Larry recently received a 2023 Initiator Award from Creative Washington. It is envisioned that murals will eventually be on all the walls of the Commons. These murals will become a visitor magnet and provide an impelling case for providing tables and chairs for casual use. Drawing from the experience of other communities, it is well understood that short-term activation must precede a long-term vision. We need to get the cars off the library lot now. Thank you for your consideration.
Jeff, who's up next?
Okay, Robert Black. Oh, I'm sorry. I clicked the other person who had their hands up. So speaker with the number ending in 534, you can go ahead.
Thank you. This is Tom Stolberg calling from Lower Town in Ann Arbor. I've read the activation recommendations, and it's an impressive piece of work. So I'd briefly like to just say I'm very grateful for your hard work, and I'm very enthusiastic about where this will lead us. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Robert Black.
Can you hear me okay, Heather?
I can. Yep.
Yes, it works. Technology works. Thank you all. I'm really happy to see you again. I'm very sorry I missed your last meeting. Only the third in the last 2 years of all of your meetings. I've been the only person who has been that dedicated to this work publicly on this group. And I'm just so happy to see you tonight. First, I want to just say I didn't make any formal remarks, but I wanted to say thank you to Heather. I want to echo the comments of Mr. Henney that Heather has been very professional in her diplomacy process, and her ability to just handle this organization has been exemplary. And I'd just like to personally say thank you to Heather. I did meet with her and Mr. Zemke and Ms. Ralph some time ago, and I was always pleasantly pleased with the way that she handled herself and the need to keep the city in the center of this work. Also, I'd like to welcome Chris. I think it's really neat to see some new blood in here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he will bring to this endeavor, especially if he's got a biological sciences background. That adds another dimension to engineering, I think. I teach at a Waldorf school. So, and then I'm so sorry I missed that last meeting, but I'm glad to see this work. I have lived in Ann Arbor for 30 years and served on many different public and private and university and business related organizations. And what I'm seeing now over the last 2 years as I've spoken in this group, I'm seeing some things come to fruition, and many of the comments that I did make previously are now actually moving forward. And the first one has to do with alignment. And I want to say alignment within the Council of the Commons is better than it's ever been. Certain aspects of it that were divisive have left the scene, and now you're working much more better together. Also within that, to know that, as you've said it, that the initiating committee is also aligned with you. And there have been some contentious issues, but I believe those are largely bridged and resolved now. But the alignment without is important also right now. There are contentious forces outside the Council of the Commons in the center of the city that would seek to demolish or do ill to this process. I think it's imperative that you meet that with some passion and force so that you can move forward. I won't say too much more about the RFP in particular. I think you're moving in the great direction with that. I've submitted previous things about the specifics of the RFP that I think are important, and then also harvesting the gold mine of the task force that lives, so that you could share more of that specific data with your potential bidders that would come in on the request for proposal. And then lastly, activation. I am thrilled by this document that I see here. The connection to the parks in Liberty Plaza, Jessica Black, is amazing, and what you can do with her, the Kempf House connection, and this idea of all the things that are coming to bear on the activation for the library lot and Library Lane there. The murals, the green team is an example of this work. And the other thing I will say is that there's an activation event that's being planned through the initiating committee that's getting some real serious momentum. Wild Ones has stepped forward. Robert Gracie is going to be helpful. We're working with Missy Stoltz to see if she will be a speaker. And there's a number of things. The theme of this year's Earth Day, April 22nd, is invest in the planet. And it's very different than some of the what you might call woo-woo things of the past. So I would encourage you all to step forward and help bring this out so that that event will, bring string lights and, not even a internet portal, but a physical portal to the Commons. And then lastly, this creating community excitement. You're doing it. I love it that you're just cheerleaders for this work. Let's build it out and bring it out into the community and move with some force into Mr. Honey's connections for the bicentennial next year, so that will be a complete celebration that will set Ann Arbor on the map once again for one of its other most amazing things. So thank you. Good to see you. Good luck, Heather, and have a great meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any other members of the public, Heather?
That is it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think in that case, we will move on to the next item of the agenda. And I believe that as our special guest for this evening, David Cohen, who David has become, I think, a really good friend and helpful advisor to some of us. I know Rita and Alice or Frank may want to speak. I was unable to make the physical tour that he took some folks on quite some time ago now, but his organization, Downtown Detroit Partnership, he is probably one of the coolest job titles that I've heard in a long time. But they were recently in the news because of their exemplary work at Campus Martius being featured as one of the best, or I think the best, town square in the United States by USA Today readers. So we were very pleased to talk with him on an ongoing basis, and very pleased to have him here tonight. I don't know, Rita, Frank, if you'd like to add anything else to that before we have David on.
Well, we had heard about David prior to meeting him, and he just blew away our already high expectations of what his organization and what he personally is bringing to the Downtown Detroit Partnership. And he's truly an inspiration, and I'm looking forward to your comments and our continued collaboration as we move forward in Ann Arbor. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much. Wow, it's a pleasure to see all of you again, and this feels like a little bit of a victory lap tour for me after the USA Today announcement. So it's always nice to get some national recognition, and yeah, the momentum seems to really be picking up, which will be an exciting part of the presentation tonight. So thank you so much, Rita. Good to see you. And with that, I'm going to share my screen here, and I'll get through a brief presentation, and I'll leave lots of time for dialogue and questions because I think that's important. I'm sure you all have a lot of specifics to get into after that. I read the activation plan. Well done. And hope that I can shed a little bit of light onto that as well. So here, let me share my screen. I'm assuming you can all see that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
perfect. Listeners over here to watch.
All right. Well, like I said, thank you again for having me. My name is David Cowan. I am the Chief Public Spaces Officer here at the Downtown Detroit Partnership. And my presentation for you tonight is the story of transformational investments in public spaces and placemaking in downtown Detroit, where I am live coming to you right now. So you can record that in the minutes, coming to you from downtown Detroit. And I should say at the outset too, that I'm not naive to the fact that Ann Arbor and Detroit are very different communities. But what I hope to inspire is that every project that we have undertaken to date, while it's different in size and scope, has had a beginning very similar to the Commons and Liberty Plaza, and has really evolved over time into something really quite impressive and beautiful. So a big theme you will soon realize in the presentation is really what everyone loves, and that's a good before and after photo. But I think for a community like Detroit, it really helps tell the story of growth, which has been particularly dramatic over the past 10 to 15 years. So here is a photo of a block about a minute away from my downtown office where I'm at now. And on the left side is a blighted streetscape, completely vacant series of storefronts, as well as, some pretty dilapidated pedestrian infrastructure. And on the right is a clean and vibrant series of storefronts, an expanded cafe space. And it's really hard to believe that this is the same set of buildings, the same view, just 10 years apart. And I really love this before and after because it really demonstrates the incredible commitment and urgency around public space, while also showing the magnitude of the effort to change perception of Detroit and our 1 square mile downtown in just 10 short years. And so, that perception is not an easy thing to change. After generations of challenges, a major bankruptcy filing, but obviously it can be done, and it's happening. So I love this before and after. Well, this is a Time magazine cover from 2009 on the left. The Tragedy of Detroit. This was the narrative. And this one on the right, Detroit named one of the world's greatest places by the same magazine it called The Tragedy of the Country in 2009. So pretty stark contrast in comparison, really. And we were very pleased to see this this cover story from Time come out just 3 months ago, a few short months. So, add that to the USA Today Best Public Square, add that to the Best Riverfront, add it to Time Magazine, one of the best places in the world. And I think the DIA also just got a really good shout out as being a top art museum in the country by the same publication. So a really great time, a really good period of momentum for, I think, cities in general. And really the pandemic, in my opinion, has not slowed anything down. It's just allowed us to tweak how we're approaching our work. So with that, the organization I work for is called the Downtown Detroit Partnership. And we are a 100-year-old public-private partnership, P3. And we're also a place management organization that has really several key focuses. I won't read all of these, but some of the top focuses are parks and public spaces, urban innovation and planning, signature events. We hold our business improvement zone. We have our bike share under our wing. And we've also got a pretty incredible board made up of 60 of my bosses. So corporate leaders in Michigan and in Detroit. So we have quite a wide diversity of work that we're constantly tackling. So here I am on the left, and our team here at DDP is now approaching 50 full-time folks and over 250 seasonal or contract employees. And just to give you the state of the state and some context, our budget's about $17 million annually from an operating standpoint. And I serve a dual role here at DDP. I'm on our leadership team, and I also oversee our parks and public spaces, events, and corporate partnerships. So for the public spaces specifically as part of that budget, we're at approximately $7 million annually with a staff of 16 full-time. And our work really spreads across 6 public spaces, 5 of them truly public, 1 of them private, but operated just like any other of our public spaces, same rules, same access, and that was important to us. But we have just over 500,000 square feet of space, all walkable. You can get to every one of our parks within a 10-minute walk. And you can see a handful of the team posts here on the right during our centennial celebration last year. And so, my background's really in urban planning and arts management. So you'll see this approach in the design of the spaces, as well as the programming, which we'll get more into, shortly. But first, I wanted to give you some context, some lay of the land of the area we're talking about. So you're looking at downtown Detroit, 1 square mile, both the 1830s original map from Augustus Woodward on the left, as well as the map that we use today. So actually, much of the original grid from the Woodward plan is still pretty much intact. And right at the center of it is an area called Campus Martius, which has not always been a park. It's been a district. It actually translates to Field of Mars. It was the location of an old barracks that was torn down and became sort of a convergence of roads. And you can see that here in this historic photo from 1922. So Campus Martius, of course, is the first park that DDP ever created. You can see here, it's a historic space, much like a roundabout you'd see in Paris. So it's not always been the park that it's known for today. Here it is, it's a convergence of roads. You can see Old City Hall, which is actually the location of where I'm physically sitting right now. That was torn down, and one Campus Martius is sitting there today. And so this district, by the late 90s, as you can see, it's still a convergence of roads. By and large, not a lot had changed to that actual physical site. And in the 90s, downtown Detroit was likely one of the most depressed vacant downtowns in the country. I mean, it was a pretty bleak time. Even the picture and the coloration here kind of looks bleak, and you can see just the sea of roads, nobody walking around. I grew up in Detroit, so I remember coming down here, and it was literally just tumbleweeds. There was physical tumbleweeds blowing around. And it's hard to believe that just a few short years later, the creation of Campus Martius across the street started to take hold around Detroit's 300th birthday, and was really spurred on by the momentum of acquiring Super Bowl XL, which, you know, you got to love America. We love a good sports event to push us, you know, to get something done really fast. So between Detroit's 300th birthday, which was a wonderful kickoff and celebration, Stevie Wonder headlined for it. I mean, it was an incredible event. It really catalyzed the development of Campus Martius Park. And here you can see a rare photo, which honestly not a lot of people have seen this, but it's a picture mid-construction in 2002. So it was really meant to be a legacy gift to Detroit, and obviously now in 2022, it's the award-winning space that everybody sort of recognizes. Very heavily programmed on purpose, because you have to think of the late 90s picture I just showed. There was nothing to do down here. There was no reason for anyone to come to this site. And now that we've got a space, we started off by having tons of events, which attracted energy and vitality to the area. And then look, you know, people started popping up small businesses around it. People started moving in next door. So truthfully, public space can catalyze and really sustain a neighborhood. So like I said, we get 4.2 million visitors annually here now, over 20 years. It's our 20th year with Campus Martius Park. And here's a look at the tree lighting ceremony from this past year. So we had about 100,000 people show up in the cold just a few weeks ago. Well, just it feels like a few weeks ago, just a few months ago. So again, an incredible series of before and afters. And I just want to underscore, you know, why investments in public space matter. And they do have a return, both a financial return, a community return, a civic return. There's pride, there's marketing, positive image. So they've got tremendous value. And of course, you know, we'll just keep putting that in during the presentation, just to remind everybody that we are the #1 public square. So now we'll jump over to Capitol Park. And this is just a block north of Campus Martius, one of 6 spaces that we manage. And this park was the site of Michigan's first state capitol, which surprisingly not many folks know. It was here in Detroit before it moved to Lansing. And that's because Detroiters at the time were worried about an aquatic invasion from Canada, which is hysterical to think about today, but there you have it. And what you're looking at on the screen on the left is the first state capitol building, which was at the site of Capitol Park. And like a lot of buildings in the 1800s, it burned down. And then it was rebuilt on the right, bigger and better, and it still burned down. So no more Capitol at Capitol Park. And they learned the second time, but the legacy is rich and incredible. And I know this isn't a history presentation, so I won't spend a lot of time here. But I mean, just, you know, a few of the amazing sites at Capitol Park. Finney Barn, which was one of the last stops on the Underground Railroad in your upper left. On your bottom right, the Michigan Plain Dealer, which was the first African-American owned newspaper. So incredible history. Stephen T. Mason, the first governor up there, he's buried at Capitol Park. So really an incredible space. And it's worth telling that story. So after the Capitol burned down, it left a void there. And as Detroit became, you know, it started to develop pretty intensely at the early turn of the century, they created a beautiful space, a really nice Parisian green park with a water feature, benches, places to gather. They had events. And then like a lot of parks over time and after the Great Depression, and as Detroit, you know, picked up more steam around the 50s, they turned it into a bus depot because they needed to get people circulating. So this entire park was raised. It was raised completely. There was a bus terminal now in the 50s. And, you know, like Campus Martius until the 90s, Capitol Park remained in a similar state. And here it is in 2008. Capitol Park was completely empty. It was vacant. It was abandoned. There was, you can still see some of the bus infrastructure there actually on the left. It was overgrown, it was unsafe. And this is 2008. This is not that long ago, to remember that it was just pigeons that were there. And then there were some interim improvements made by the city. This lovely concrete oasis here in 2011. And then DDP took over management of it in 2015 and has been fundraising and working to renovate it. And of course, now it's closer to what it looked like in 1922, a beautiful green space. So really getting the creation of the park correct has always been important. So, oh, and I should say we built a dog park as well in 2022 there. That's not historic, but after everyone got a puppy during COVID, we thought we should build that. And in 2000, more pet-friendly units started cropping up, so we needed it also. But that's Capitol Park. Cadillac Square, I think you'll all be keenly interested in because of the food program and the market program that you're creating. And this is a look again at it. Again, DDP is 100 years old, so I like to put it in that context. But a big, wide open promenade in 1900. Prior to that, however, it was Detroit Central Marketplace, which was the open air market prior to Eastern Market existing. And this pavilion actually is still around, and it's been preserved at the Henry Ford Greenfield Village. Fun fact. So running a market at this site is something that's been going on for over 100 years, and it's something that we continue to be inspired by today. Like Capitol Park, apparently every public space in Detroit was raised at one point to make it a bus stop or a trolley stop, and here you can see that. And then fast forward to 2011, this was really the humble beginning of activation in this space by DDP. So there are only like a handful of food trucks in existence at the time. The pretty lighter, quicker, cheaper amenities here. You just see some umbrellas, some colorful movable furniture. We drew some basketball courts in paint on the roadway to make that accessible. We later called it the sports zone. But really, the space has taken off and evolved over time, and it's become an incredible space for markets on Fridays, food truck rallies daily. We have the largest food truck rally in Michigan on a daily basis, over 75 food trucks in our repertoire. And of course, those move around to different parks, but built that from 2 trucks back in 2011. So just takes time for some of this stuff. And then, of course, Cadillac Square, now known for the winter programming, the Cadillac Lodge, the downtown Detroit markets. So this is a pretty easy one. Our other park, Beacon Park, it was just a dirt lot in 2016. So no major history to rehab or recover here. But yeah, we took that dirt lot in partnership with DTE and created Beacon Park. So really connecting a constellation of walkable urban parks. And we created a whole programming plan specific to this site so that it didn't feel like a copy paste of the others. And it's just turned out to be a beautiful space, beautiful community space with its own unique identity. So I share all of these before and afters with you and just a little bit of our journey, just to illustrate what makes a great public space and how, from the beginning, nobody gets it right, but it kind of gels after a while. And I hope that helps you all frame this project. So what I think makes a great public space is that it has to be safe, clean, inviting, and inclusive. It has to have comfortable, movable, and colorful furniture and umbrellas. It's got to have lush gardens and greenery. People love a water feature too, but they're expensive. So just a warning there. They love dynamic and interesting lighting for visual interest, for programming and safety. You got to have high quality food and beverage, because that's really what's going to add that amenity that keeps people there for longer than 5-10 minute stints at a time when you don't have events. Our average dwell time, by the way, in the parks is 90 minutes, and a lot of that is to the activity we have, but also because people want to have a coffee or a cocktail and food of all different types: casual, fine dining, and grab and go. All of those. I think that space for unprogrammatic and spontaneous use is also important. So if I just want to read a book or have a chat or a work meeting with my friends, that's important too. I think flexible design is important. And just knowing that the space you design today is not going to maybe be used the same way 5 or 10 years from now. So building it flexibly so that you can, you can evolve with the programming. And then technology like point of sale, fiber lines for the cafe or your mobile bar, Wi-Fi, cameras, enough power, gas line. That's all detail stuff, but incredibly important if you're going to use the space to its highest capacity. And then, of course, a great and diverse repertoire of year-round programming and a place management organization or team that makes it happen. So that's all of you. And I think that once you've done that, not only are people going to start using the space, it starts to become busy even when it's not an event. Campus Martius, you had to program the heck out of it to get people there. Now we can't even keep up with the amount of crowds we get. So that's an evolution of success. And once you've done all of the hallmarks of making a great public space, the media just starts to show up randomly and highlight the growth. And then new and interesting small businesses start popping up and residential capacity starts being maxed out. And the property owners start using your pictures in their marketing materials saying, wouldn't you love to live right next to Campus Martius Park or Beacon Park? And then corporations and commercial tenants start to be influenced by this because their employees want to live, work in an exciting place. And usually that's within 0.25 miles of a great park. And then after that, people are getting engaged at the park. They want to have their wedding there, which is a bad idea, but at least that's a compliment. And then the park becomes a gathering place that's not manufactured or forced, but inclusive and takes on a life of its own. And then vendors start reaching out, they want to get involved. And then the beautiful thing at that point is you start getting a new wave of inbound calls from corporate partners, corporate sponsors, or donors that want to give back and also want to reach the number of people using the space to further their brand. So those are all outcomes of a great public space. There's so much value in that. It's easy to think about, parks are such a nice place to have a coffee, sit on a bench and enjoy the day. They are that, but they're also these forces for greater change and development in urban landscapes. So our operating funding model is about 1/3 earned revenue, 1/3 contributed, and we've got an endowment and some other mechanisms as well. But really, corporate partnerships 1/3, foundations and grants 1/3, and then earned revenue 1/3 is really the breakout of that. And like I said, our budget's about $7 million, but that covers all 6 of the parks. So in some of the parks, we're actively fundraising for new capital initiatives and constantly thinking about how we're going to transform and evolve as well. So we're not done. Even though I showed you the after pictures for 2022, we still have a lot of work to do on our end. So a little bit about the earned revenue, and here you can see our food programs. We've got rentals. I call them side hustles for our earned revenue. We have rentals, we have food trucks, we have markets, we have an ice rink. We have public art royalties from work that we export across the country that folks rent from us. We got a lot of side hustles, but it really all matters. It contributes to the funding mix. If you've got a great restaurant and cafe, that can generate rent or some kind of concession relationship that helps sustain that and gives you great food and beverage. You can see Park up in the left and Lumen down in the right. So that's been really key because, again, it brings people to the space year round. It adds that level of amenity, and people love food trucks. They love sitting down at a restaurant, and people will, the more options you have for people, the more people you're going to get. So competition between isn't something we've ever experienced because the more people are bringing down, everybody's, the tide is rising for everybody. So. And then a little of our programming strategy. So I always try to make a cameo in here, but we have 2,000 events a year, and they really span across. Like tree lighting is our biggest at 100,000 at Campus Martius, but we've got events that happen weekly that are 50 to 200 people, and those add up. Those make a big difference. Whether it's fitness, and then we've also got movie nights. You can see that in the bottom center there. We do community partner programs. That's the Detroit Youth Choir up in the middle center. We celebrated their big appearance on America's Got Talent, and then our rink. We get over 100,000 skaters a year. So just the more activity you can bring in stable I think the park will be long term. And doing unique and interesting things too. So everybody's got the movies, everybody's got the yoga, but there are ways to enhance it and offer something different that I think are unique. Up in the left is an urban beach we created with a shipping container restaurant. It's going on its, I think, 13th year. And we try and reinvent this thing every year, but people will not let us. They love it. They love it to death. And then you can see Beacon Park has giant fitness classes. But I think having something for everyone every time is not the way to go about it. But having a repertoire of programming throughout the year that appeals to a wide range of folks is the way to go. And then you're just seeing intergenerational folks, people come together. You're seeing a collision of your community, which I think is really special. So with that, that's the presentation. I wanted to leave lots of time for questions, and if I could figure out how to X out of here, I will be back on your screen. Thank you so much. And I've left my email here too if you want to reach out and talk about anything specifically.
Thank you so much, David. We really cannot say enough how much we appreciate you spending your evening with us, and congratulate you on the latest recognition for the DDP and for Campus Martius. Are there questions specifically for David at all about? Yeah, Rita, go ahead.
I don't have a question here, but I just want to say that of the visit that we had to with David, the thing that I remember the most was the quality of interaction with you and your staff, and how warm and fun it was to see you all interact. And I think that feeds what you have generated here. And so I just want to applaud you on what I saw, and also this particular outcome is really great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, places are just places. Like what makes them is are people. So yeah, we try to never let our focus on a geographic location distract us from the fact that you're designing it for somebody to use. And if you don't demonstrate that with your own team, then it translates to the public experience. So yeah, that's both intentional and keeps us sane given the amount of work we have. So it's self-serving in that front as well. But thank you, Rita, for that.
It's a real team. That's what it is.
Yeah. Alan, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, David. As a Ann Arbor visitor to Detroit and all those spots over more years than you have, it's nice to see it come to these spots come to real life. I knew them when they were alive way back when, but I had two questions. In these 2,000 some events you have, how much of that is initiated out of a programming team that is within sort of your umbrella, and how much is it spontaneous from who knows where coming out of the community, because it's easy for people to imagine and initiate the use. So that's one question that very much of interest to us, how to get participation in the actual program. And the other is, you say you have a skating space. Is that year round, or do you start it when the winter comes? Is it artificial ice? Is it real ice? How does it work? We tried the idea in our commons to have a skating space, and it kind of didn't get far enough to be tried out. But it seems like winter, even though they're sort of disappearing, is a time for skating and a big attraction. So how do you find that skating, and is it all the year round, or what's the story there also?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Alan, for your comments as well. I'll start with your last question about skating. So the rink at Campus Martius Park is going on its 20th year as well. So that was an original amenity put in with the park. And the park was designed to have a big expansive lawn in the summer and then transition to an ice rink in the winter. So it literally sits on top, with glycol lines and foam boards on top of our grass from the prior year. And then when spring comes around, pretty shortly, we're going to be rolling out new sod, which fun fact, in Michigan, it's not ready yet. So we have to go a little south to Kentucky to bring the grass up, but we won't tell anybody else that. So the rink is a good revenue driver for us too, as well as an amenity that people love. We own the rink, we build the rink, we have a management company run it for us. So it's not our core team, but the manager who runs it lives in Detroit. And he might as well be. I mean, we've got so many people who are contract in the way they're structured, but they feel like any member of our team, and we treat them that way as well. And that kind of goes to your first question about the structure of our events. We produce a fair amount ourselves. We what I call a co-promote, where we team up with somebody and we jointly produce something. We look for programming partners in the community that do what they do best and host them. Sometimes they just are looking for space. Other times we seek them out to fill a gap. So it's really intentional. There's not a lot of spontaneous programming that happens without our team and the proactivity of our team to get the thing operating in a world-class way. And, we really try to vet programming partners carefully, just because we prioritize the visitor experience. There are a lot of parks that sort of take the kind of laissez-faire approach, where, show up in the space and kind of you can, do whatever at any point and feel it out. But with a space like Campus Martius or Beacon Park, if we did that, there would be collision of the craziest stuff at all times, and nobody would want to be in the park because there's just so much noise going on. You wouldn't be able to read a book or whatever. So we try to balance the access with the curated, nature of the park. And it's something we're always trying to improve on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Seems like you're very intentional with all of your efforts, David.
Yeah.
Frank and Heather, and then Councilmember Briggs.
Yes, David. I recall on our visit, we talked about food trucks, and that's an issue and part of the study that we're undertaking for activation. Could you talk a little bit about how food trucks, food trucks and fixed location businesses work in the same location? Is there a sense of competition, or is there a way to kind of manage the food trucks so that they don't, so they work sort of in concert with the fixed locations?
Yeah, great question. It's all about being complementary. So, when we're placing food trucks and scheduling trucks, we're not putting somebody with the same type of food right next to a brick and mortar that has the same kind of food. We're adding to the mix, the restaurant mix, and filling a gap in what cuisine people are looking for. Also, I don't know about Ann Arbor, but we've got quite a few places that aren't even open for lunch, and there is a returning workforce in some percentage on some days that nobody can wrap their minds around, because I think it's still evolving. But there is a need for grab and go options that are not sit down in many cases. So again, I think the success of Campus Martius and the programming that drives people gives them a reason to come down. That only benefits the district as a whole, because if I come down for a game at Little Caesars Arena and I'm like, I don't want to eat at the stadium, I'm going to find a restaurant, I stumble upon that. Or, there's all this organic discovery happening when you bring people down for a specific purpose. When we have an event in the park, they might realize, oh, wow, I didn't know that new restaurant was next to Campus Martius. I should check it out. So people want what they want. They want grab and go. They want casual service. They want bar service, and they want fine dining. And I think having a mix of that is key to a vibrant city.
Thank you.
Heather and Erica.
Yes, thank you for indulging me, Adam. It's not really my role to jump in and ask questions, but I can't help myself. Your presentation, David, I do want to comment that it's really inspirational. It seems like you're living the urban planner's dream. I mean, that just seems like such fun, exciting work to be doing. But I have two questions. One's a quirky question, which is, did you say that Stephen T. Mason's body is buried? next to a stat or under a statue. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. Without being too grim for everybody, but Stevens T. Mason is actually interned in the sculpture of that depicts him at Capitol Park. So yeah, he's obviously quite old now. So there's
That's fantastic.
there's not a lot there. But he is covered in an American flag, actually interned inside of the base of that sculpture at Capitol Park. So lots of unique history in all these spaces. But then juxtapose it to Beacon Park, where there's you're building it from scratch and it's brand new. So we've got these historic spaces that we've had to kind of retrofit. Like you buy a historic home and there's like 2 outlets, and you're like, oh my God, I need to figure this out. That's the same thing we did with a lot of these historic spaces and continue to do. So, but not at Beacon Park, because we built that to be to cover all of our needs. So we do a lot of lighting activations over there, and especially given our sponsor at that park, it makes sense. So thank you, Heather.
Yeah, thank you. That's really fascinating. My second question is I'm wondering if you can highlight what makes your relationship with the city successful. I imagine, you have to work pretty closely with the city, and we here in Ann Arbor don't have too many examples of public-private partnerships. So I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that. I'm sure there's a lot of detail to cover, but if you have a summary that you can give, that would be great.
We have a great management and operating agreement that was actually modeled after Central Parks. And we stay in touch with Central Park Conservancy, pretty regularly in our daily work. So that's helpful, is getting everybody on board from the beginning about how this partnership works. And then honestly, everybody's really busy in Detroit because the need is so massive. So, it's kind of like, all hands on deck at some point, and you kind of divide and conquer, which is why I'm thankful the Riverfront Conservancy is kind of like doing that. And, the city's got the neighborhood parks rocking and figuring out, and we've got our downtown district, and Midtown's got their momentum going. So it really is a team effort, even if we're sort of, our own separate organizations. So the city's been great partners, and honestly, there's not a whole lot. I mean, we do have to get things permitted, but through our agreement, we've been able to streamline that as best we can. There's still some things that, you got to do, but yeah, it's been positive.
Yeah, thank you.
And just a couple of notes here before I turn it over to Erica. Fun fact for any of you history buffs out there, because I know there are several of us on the Bicentennial Commission. Stevens T. Mason's body actually moved it's still there, but they had to locate it when they redeveloped one of the times. So there's
like it shifted out of its original place, and
yeah,
there had to be
20 feet. 20 feet shifted under the ground. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've moved the poor guy around a few times. Actually, when we were renovating Capitol Park, there was a coalition of folks who showed up to a community meeting and said, do not move him again. Just let him be, so understood.
Yes. So, and David, so too, we actually have had some of us at least have had a conversation with the Central Park Conservancy as well. Heather participated in that. And that's nice. A program that we're very interested in that they offered up to us as well. So,
good.
Very good to hear. Yeah. Erica.
Yeah, thanks. And once again, thanks for being here tonight and sharing the excitement and what you're doing there in Detroit. For us to be able to learn from a little bit. And my question was very much kind of aligned with what Heather's last question was essentially kind of a little bit more kind of around your relationship with the city in terms of that public-private partnership. Obviously, DDP is a nonprofit, and it sounds like the funding is coming from sort of the earned revenue and then private donations. In terms of your relationship, I guess if there's anything more that you wanted to add around that relationship with parks or with the city of Detroit in terms of kind of that relationship,
sure,
That's helpful.
Yeah, everything we do is privately fundraised. So no public dollars from the city directly. They have supported in a huge way on utilities and some other great things. So there's a great relationship and there is support. We recently got a grant from the state, which is exciting because there's some American Rescue Plan dollars that I think are starting to figure out how to flow. And I think we were one of the early grant recipients for the revitalization and placemaking project for the MEDC, the state of Michigan. So that was exciting. That'll allow us to make some pretty key changes to some of the parks. But yeah, public funding historically has not been our sweet spot. We're trying to improve that because there's going to be more needs coming on. But yeah, it's really been corporate focused. It's been individual donors and kind of legacy focused, and then earned revenue. And you got to love earned revenue because if the economy, God forbid, whatever happens, like you still can kind of you can float that without worrying about somebody else's business. You just kind of have to worry about your own with that. So yeah, it's been positive. So hopefully that helps answer your question on the agreement piece.
Yeah, I think so. And so in terms of all of sort of the marketing, all of that piece, that's all being taken up within the nonprofit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty turnkey. And Campus Martius, it's unique because we built it and it was given as a gift to the city of Detroit, but we managed that park through this agreement. You know what I mean? So it's yes, it's a great collaboration with the city, but it just feels complimentary, and it's inspired us and others to seek us out to consult and do things like for Beacon Park. That was a fun project, to work on that space, and others have started to reach out around the country too, to just sort of bring some best practices or just project manage and do some other stuff. So yeah, it's been great.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Alan and then Alice.
Yeah, another little quick question. When you have a food truck, how do what's the space cost? Is it a flat rate, $20 and you get a parking space, or $40, or a percent of income, or an artist is there? Is it a flat rate for a space to set up your little pop-up, or is it a share of what they 5% of what they make or something? Or do you work both ways, or how is that?
Yeah. So for our permanent restaurants and cafes, we have both the base rent as well as a percentage of rent, or a percentage of sales rather, in addition to the rent. So that's how that works. For food trucks, we just do a flat fee per day for participation. We could do percentage of sales, but to make that truly work, we would have to issue a point of sale system to each truck and be able to more easily audit their sales. And it seems a little, and music festivals have started doing this, so it's not unprecedented. It just, for us, we kind of want that business just to, handle their own thing and, pay us the rent. And then we ask them, of course, they don't have to share details, but we ask them, how many tickets did you do? So we have some data to track their sales. And then honestly, if they tell you the ticket number, the average entree is like between $10 and $15 for a food truck. So you can add up how much they're making. So yeah, it varies. And then for our market, it's the same. It's a pay per occurrence type of thing. And there's different market programs that have different fee structures. So the Cadillac Square winter markets that last for 6 weeks is a different fee than our just Friday pop-up.
Thanks a lot. So for a day, what's the truck cost?
Right now is 125 for 11 to 3, I think, is our hours.
Okay.
Maybe it's 150, but yeah, somewhere in there.
Thank you.
Thinking about a retirement gig there, Alan?
I have a peddler's cart for knife sharpening.
Not so sure that would be fall within their fee structure. All right, Alice and then Rita.
Thanks. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but I recall that when the three or four of us went to visit your whole system with you leading the way, we landed off the bus at Grand Circus, and isn't that right? Near the stadium and all that stuff, and it has underground parking.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by this story that it's been rebuilt twice and still accommodates both the park and the underground parking.
Yeah. There was a couple of the other parks we manage. I didn't cover quite as in depth, just for time. But Grand Circus Park is one of the historic ones. It's actually a twin park that's divided by Woodward, so it's symmetrical on both sides. And underneath it is a parking garage. And the park was actually, demolished. The historic pieces of it were taken off, and then the garage was built in, and then the historic pieces were just put back. And then the park was pretty much designed to be sort of a replica with maybe a few enhancements. And this is, by the way, in the 50s and 60s. Like, this was not DDP recently.
Mm-hmm.
And so Grand Circus Park, actually, we've got a plan to renovate it again, but not dig it all up this time. So, but yeah, working with the reality of a parking deck underneath is not been as big of an issue as we maybe thought it would from like a root system, because we've got pretty old trees up there and other weight on it, and it's fine. It just has to be re-engineered or engineered correctly.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And last one up is Rita. You are muted, Rita.
I remember seeing those beautiful trees there at Grand Circus. I was really interested in the statistic that you talked about with dwell time as a measurable. Can you explain how you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So data has gotten important. Obviously, technology is key to how data has evolved for us. And I think the old way of getting counts from people coming into the park was with a clicker and a hand clicker, and kind of just hiring people or taking your staff and just good old fashioned stakeout observation, writing notes. And now we're able to do it on sort of a larger scale with technology. So we have a system called Springboard, which can sort of track the movement of objects that it recognizes as people. There's no detail to that. It just is sort of a kind of algorithm that tracks that. So we know through those both the number of people coming into the space as well as sort of when they exit the perimeter. There's also more invasive data ways you could go about it through cell phone location services and all that. And I guess, over time, the illusion of sort of privacy on your phone and online is sort of kind of a myth at this point. But, but we haven't gone totally as high tech as maybe some of our corporate friends like that have big box stores that sort of can track your eyeball movement or whatever, So, but we've gotten a little smarter about how we're tracking.
Thank you.
Very cool. Well, David, thank you so much for being here tonight and taking an hour out of your evening. And it looks like you're still in your office. So we really
I don't live far, so I'm right up the road. Thank you all so much. A pleasure, and follow up with me. I hope I answered any questions you had, and that this was helpful for you all. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Well, in that case, we're going to move into the next item on the agenda, which is the updates on our work streams. As everyone knows here, we've had the 2 work streams going and, varying updates over the last few months. And so we've got, you saw in the agenda, attached to the agenda, a rather lengthy series of activation recommendations. We're going to just bring that up to put a pin in it. I created a slide deck that Rita and I can walk you through that just touch on the top lines on that piece. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about the first one, which is the long-term planning work stream. And we have some updates tonight that I think are going to be pretty noteworthy, and I'll like to turn over to Frank to kick those updates off.
Thanks, Adam. And boy, what a backdrop with David's presentation to show us what's possible. It won't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight in Detroit, but my goodness, when a community can rally around opportunities like that. So as the representatives of Library Green on the Council of the Commons, Rita and I would like to share some, I think some really good news. At the Library Greens board meeting last Friday, the 24th, we voted unanimously to increase our financial commitment to the Center of the City Design and Development Study, which has stood at $20,000 for quite some time. We're now committing up to $70,000 to the study. And we did that particular number because it's our understanding that combined with the city's $40,000, which then bring us to $110,000, we're meeting a threshold that will allow us to begin to develop and issue a request for proposals for the study of this site. We're very pleased to make this announcement. It's really made possible through the generosity of many people, and some prominent organizations in the community have stepped forward over the last few months to make this possible. In addition to the many individual donors, I want to highlight and make special mention of three organizations in town, two foundations and a corporate supporter. The Harry S. and Margaret D. Towsley Foundation has provided major support. And the Mosaic Foundation of Rita and Peter Hayden have been supportive over the years with several gifts as well. And Zingerman's Community of Businesses for their generous support. Going forward, and this is what was so inspirational about David's presentation, with an example like Detroit and other communities like Royal Oak and Plymouth, Library Green is eager to build and strengthen its public-private partnership with the city and our community, between our city and the community. And what greater moment, similar to what Detroit celebrated its 300th anniversary. We're on the cusp of Ann Arbor's 200th anniversary. So we're excited to launch this study, develop this park, which we feel would be a treasured asset for Ann Arbor's third century. So with that, I hope we can move forward quickly with the city and get the RFP written and issued and really be off to the races here. So we're pleased to provide that announcement and new support.
Councilmember Briggs.
Okay, that's exciting, and thank you to the Library Green Conservancy for doing the work. I think it's a great announcement following, especially the presentation that we just had around sort of the real need for work like this to be led by a nonprofit and built off of public-private partnerships. So this is an exciting step forward.
And I would like to say as well, Frank, Rita, and everybody from the Library Green Conservancy who is on the board and also who made the financial contributions, especially the increased momentum over the last few months. That has been really exciting to see. And you certainly earn a healthy congratulations for all the increased work. So thank you.
I might add, in the fundraising business, it's always great to have deadlines, and the last $5,000 came together over lunch on Tuesday. So, and the individual knew we wanted to announce this on Thursday. So,
Well, I think it's very exciting, and we had a conversation with the Parks Department, who's going to be issuing the RFP on behalf of this process and writing all the standardized portions. And they had previously indicated after the pros plan was complete, they would have some time to work on it. We're at that point now, and so we are excited to get back in touch with them and begin that process. And so. This was a catalyzing moment. We're not out of the woods yet, but certainly a big step forward. So congrats to everybody. Certainly an exciting piece. So with that, we'll go into the next work stream, if that's okay with folks. And that is an update around activation. And so, Rita, I don't know if you'd like to say anything before I pull up some of these slides that summarize the document. They're not any different. They're just the top lines because that document is quite long. So, Rita?
I don't have anything planned to say, but I would say that my idea of this is that it is a demonstration of an urban park that is very different from the kinds of parks that Ann Arbor is used to thinking of. And I think it's a great opportunity. And I think the combination of David Cowan's presentation tonight is really helpful to moving that concept forward. And I think it can make Ann Arbor really fun. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I would agree with that sentiment. And I will say, hats off to Rita. She really spearheaded all of the research on this and brought in people, different folks as needed, and engaged us all and dragged us on to conference calls with different organizations and groups around the city. But really, we learned a lot. And so I think all of those hours were really worth it. And so the document, it's up just for draft form, up for discussion, now and going forward. We can talk about what we want to do and how we want to make those recommendations and to whom. But we wanted to start the conversation this evening. So let me go ahead and share this. Can you see the screen here?
Yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned, this slide deck is just the top lines because the document is quite lengthy, and I am bound and determined to get out of here by 9 o'clock tonight. And so we'll go through here. This is a little bit of the layout and structure of the first section, background and properties. We outline really what the center of the city is, what it's comprised of, and who we are as the Council of the Commons. We give an outline of each of the properties and the diversity that exists amongst them, and a reason for these activation recommendations. Then we get into the next phase of the recommendations, which are an outline of the current city processes and costs. This includes the reservation process, the costs for reserving each of the spaces, which is quite different from space to space, and the process is quite different. So it is a varying exercise. We put those in there because we spent a lot of time trying to figure them out, frankly, and we wanted to illustrate why we believe things need to improve. And that's not to say that there's somebody at fault for this. I think that one of the things we learned is because we have multiple departments of the city managing each of these different spaces, they each have their own process for doing things. And that makes perfect sense if you're working in the department, because that could be your sphere of influence and the world in which you are living your daily life. But when you're trying to look at reserving a space such as the center of the city, even though it's comprised of those three individual properties, it's quite a bit different. So we looked at it from the outside in, and I think that was actually a really helpful way to think about it. So we have several recommendations, and they start here with city process improvements. We recommend a number of common elements that be created. Common reservation process for each of the sites in the center of the city. Common event calendar so that the center of the city is viewed as one space that is even though 3 properties, but one space from the perspective of outside community members that can be broken up into different areas for reservation. Connected online systems. So what this really means is making sure that calendars are connected from special events to parks, and that there is continuity amongst those, so that if you are looking at the space from a potential applicant for reservation, you are looking at the same data. And we recommend some parking removal as well, and at least on a 3-season basis, in order to send really a signal about the space being utilized for other things besides parking. And it flows, frankly, in line with a number of casual use recommendations we have too.
I'm assuming that you're going to run through and summarize all this, and then after that, we're going to have any discussion about it. Is that sort of the deal?
Correct. Yep, that's right. I've got about 20 slides, and so I'm going to plow through them as quick as I can here, and then we'll talk. And then, this is just the first discussion, so no conclusions need to be drawn tonight. Next process improvement we recommend is some really intentional bridge building with block partners and surrounding businesses, not just the ones on the block, but certainly businesses that surround the block as well. With that in line, especially on the block partners, the establishment of consistent easement for especially special event usage. We heard from certainly the Parks Department and other city government agencies that this does happen, and it does happen fairly easily, but consistency is something that's helpful across the board. We also recommend that sustainable support be built. So as David noted, and Alan, I'm glad you asked the questions you asked, because I think that was important information to tease out. This stuff is not free. And if we want to have a sustainable center of the city, we do need to figure out a revenue model that supports it. And it supports staff time at the city, coupled with volunteers, is the direction that we are recommending here. With this setting of some sustainable fees, we don't identify what those fees should be. I think that's something that really is a function of in a discussion or discussions with city staff who have more knowledge of that type of thing, and frankly, how it relates to other fees that are charged throughout the city. We also recommend some extension of the ARPA funds that are currently reserved just for the Liberty Plaza area of the center of the city, and the extension of using those over the other properties as well, in conjunction with these other improvements. The next main bucket of the report, there's sort of these 3 buckets: the background on the properties and city process improvements. That's bucket 1. The next bucket is regularly planned activations, and the final bucket is the casual use. And then we do get into some recommendations that are specific to the resolution that Councilmember Briggs, Councilmember Dish, Councilmember Grand, Councilmember Hayner sponsored previously. So enabling regularly planned activations. We have a series of recommendations here, starting with branding. We heard from the Parks Department a couple of months ago, I think, around a brand that they have been establishing for Liberty Plaza at the center of the city. And we thought this was a really cool idea. And so we said that we should establish that consistent center of the city brand, and have these micro brands associated with it. So things like the library lot and library lane, not necessarily having to rename things, but really establishing these are all under the umbrella brand of the center of the city, and have some signage that utilizes that type of thing. It doesn't have to be fancy, but directional and consistency around that brand. We indicate that there should be a public-facing portal. This really started with an idea around a website, and we took it much more beyond that. But it includes certainly a website, and We do feel like in the last bullet point here, you could see some third-party management of that website is important. One of the things that David's organization has is a website called Downtown Detroit Partnership. Decked Out Detroit, which is a third-party website that is branded to support all the activities that are at these downtown parks that Downtown Detroit Partnership manages. But it's a website that is effectively a portal into the park rather than a portal into the Downtown Detroit Partnership. So a little bit different. And so we adopted that idea. We recommend a similar concept. We recommend a social media presence that goes along with it that can be utilized to do some organic hashtagging, organic advertising, but also some paid social media advertising, because that's a great, really cost-effective way to get the word out around activities that are going on in the center of the city. Taking that connectivity that we talked about amongst the two city websites to the next level, we recommend some enhanced online connectivity to this third-party website. And then, as I previously mentioned, some concerted advertising. There are multiple ways to advertise. Certainly paid social media ads, earn media attention through the local newspaper, and of course, social media presence because of hashtags and other things while events are going on there. We do recommend that some facilitation of events. David did a nice job highlighting this, that they were very intentional with how they approach events even today, but I imagine especially as they were getting things going in their early days. So we recommend sort of at least a quarterly series of anchor events is what we decided to call these, sort of signature types of things that people can come to expect. A great example of something that could be extended was the park's Christmas market or holiday market that they had there in Liberty Plaza last year. That event it just has tremendous potential in my eyes, and really could serve as an anchor event for that season. We also recommend that the time period be filled in with intentional monthly events of some kind. And there's a lot of variation. We had some really great ideas and ideation around this that we did. Those are all some recommendations. Some ideas are in the document as well. We were really intentional around inclusivity. We talked about it quite openly in our discussions that we did not want people to feel pushed out of any area of the park, of any area of the center of the city. And so these were some of the questions that were asked on the visit to downtown Detroit as well. And we gathered some data there and gathered some data from the discussions with other communities and came up with a couple of recommendations. One is based on the idea around volunteer ambassadors to help welcome people to the park and let them know that they're welcome there no matter what their socioeconomic status or their home status may be, and then also specifically targeting events that are intended to be fee-free and be targeted towards constituencies who may be needing some extra services, community services. And so really being intentional that these are not add-ons, these are part of the activation process for the spaces. And I'll just say in one of my conversations with some of the organizers of Sonic Lunch, they recounted that during their setup, they always went around and talked to people who were hanging around the park in Liberty Plaza. And as a result of that, they built a really strong rapport with those individuals, and they felt included. They never, at first, when Sonic Lunch started, people may have left the park if they didn't want to if they didn't feel welcome or they didn't want to participate. But these organizers shared that that was not happening because of their intention at being inclusive. And so that was a really positive point that I thought, and we tried to bring that and lift that up in the idea around volunteer ambassadors. We do recommend this third-party limited joint management. What we didn't want to get into was a complete embodiment of the public-private partnership like Downtown Detroit Partnership has. We didn't think we were ready for that yet as a community, but we should work our way to that. And so what we talked about was the idea of, I already mentioned this online portal management, establishing a third-party website that pulls from the city sites, but also includes other information and really looks like an advertisement for the center of the city and the events that are happening there. But also then we thought that at the point where Ann Arbor is right now with this effort, we could recruit some volunteers to help with some of the ideas that we're talking about, some of the programs that could happen at the park. And so this third-party limited partnership could include management of that volunteer recruitment effort and coordination. So it could reduce any a burden that that city staff would normally have to bear. The final bucket here in the activation recommendations are the enabling of the areas for casual use. One of the things I think quote that I sort of stuck out in my head, Rita, I may butcher this a little bit, so you may have to step in here, but people feel in these communities that are really engaging in intentional activation. People feel that the space is their own when the activations are not happening, and it is because it's their own. They're public open spaces, and so they see them like that, and the community intentionally enables that to happen. That is not just organic. There's thought that goes into that process, and so the first recommendation here that is built out. We talk about it in the city process improvements previously, but it's built out here. Is the permanent, semi-permanent parking removal of the top of the library structure. So we're calling that the library lot throughout the document. And so the removal of permanent, semi-permanent removal of cars from that area. We say at least 3 seasons is the recommendation. We determined that in particular, with the change of work downtown, that structure is nowhere near becoming full. And so there is ample parking available. And so we feel pretty strongly that this is really a negligible financial impact. The 36 spots on the top of the structure are able to be, that revenue is able to just be shifted down below without any adverse effects at all. So we don't think this is going to be a cost. And we thought that was important to call out, frankly. We feel like that throughout all of the properties, including the Kemp House yard, we should establish configurable furniture arrangements. In the document, there's some links to some ideas here. I think we linked heavily to Capitol Park in Detroit. We linked to Centennial Commons in Royal Oak. And they had some really great pictures of things that the city in those cases, or the DDP, had done to create community spaces that could be configured based on the needs of the community. And we thought that was a really a good way to approach it. People wanted to be able to set up and sit at a table and have a casual lunch, or do a Zoom call from their laptop or tablet. And they also wanted to be able to sit in a lounging style chair. Adirondack chairs were a common theme throughout a lot of the spaces that we looked at. But the key thing is that they're able to be configurable, that it wasn't just fixed and spread apart in some cases, that you could sit as a community and gather, and that the furniture reflected the promotion of that idea. So we outline really what those things look like, include some examples, and we did some cost research too, and include some ranges around costs. And obviously, cost ranges are heavily dependent upon how much you purchase. We included item pricing, some approximations, and there's obviously variation within that too. We also get into lighting, and we had a lot of ideas. We only included 1 or 2 in this document, but there's a lot of ideas around lighting. And part of the reason we limited it to 1 or 2 because of the fact that there is string lighting already in Liberty Plaza that the Parks Department put up, and it has a really nice ambience to it. And so we included the recommendations around string lighting across all 3 of the properties. And you know, I emphasize that it's all 3 of the properties. That includes the Kemp House area. And part of the reason that we are intentional about including that is because it's a space that we found in our discussions was not being utilized heavily through the reservation process. And so we really wanted to be intentional that was not left out, that it was not just a historic home on Division, that it was part of the center of the city. And certainly there are other limitations that come with that, but but we didn't want it to be a second thought. So string lighting, again, same idea as with the configurable furniture. We included cost estimates and that sort of thing. Shading. We mentioned that there are 2 areas, 2 of the 3 center of the city properties that have really nice natural shading, both Kemp House and Liberty Plaza. But there should be some additional shading. Actually, I have a typo in here, not across Library Lane. It actually says in the document across the library lot. So my apologies for that, but really including either sail shading and or umbrellas to provide for some coverage from the sun across the library lot, and in particular in concert with configurable furniture, so that you have spaces there that are, frankly, I had forgotten about the downtown Detroit beach in Campus Martius. I'd been to that before though, and certainly I think that inadvertently influenced our visions for this. And so certainly creating some of those types of spaces on the library lot as well. We highlighted that waste disposal was potentially could increase, and frequency of emptying containers and making sure we're doing so in ways that support the Ann Arbor sustainability goals was important to us. We brought that up. And you previously heard in the public comment tonight from Jeff Crockett and the Green Team, who has been really going after trying to put some art, privately funded art, on the spaces. And so we really highlighted this as an important part, not just the art that Jeff and Mary T. Foles and others are working on, but really having this visual artistic enhancements throughout to draw continuity across the space and add some real beautiful visual connection. We've seen that on the side of buildings in downtown Ann Arbor already, and on the sides of utility connection points and that sort of thing. And you know, we're really an artistic community, very creative, and we thought this could be a real high point to blend continuity across the spaces and create the connection and add some real beautiful visual representation to some hard concrete. We also highlighted natural area enhancements. There's great gardening programs going on in the spaces, but connecting them and making sure that we're gathering donated plants, which is happening in some cases already across all the spaces, was very important. You know, we have garden beds in Liberty Plaza, certainly gardening around the grass on Kemp House's yard, and also the Green Team's gardening at the library lot are areas of highlighting, but making sure those are continuous and volunteer recruitment is engaged for all 3, we thought was important to target together. We spoke with the DDA and they indicated that they had located a storage locker to store equipment, and we recommend that we make use of that for more common equipment that is going to be needed for special event purposes, and to try and make the lives of staff and volunteers a little bit easier in supporting the activation. We specifically asked questions of communities we spoke with around theft and vandalism. And we included responses from those communities in the recommendations. We'd just like to say that we think this idea around theft and vandalism, especially as it pertains to configurable or movable furniture is really overblown. The idea that this will happen and we're going to have huge swaths of furniture stolen does not appear to be supported by statistics from other communities, at least. And so we relied on that and included those pieces here. And finally, as David Cowan highlighted, we thought the idea around public and private partnership was going to be really important to not only further the transformation of the spaces, but really the activation of the spaces too. And we embrace that. We know this is not going to be free. There are real costs associated with this. But we think that the returns economically and the benefit to the community is well worth it. And it should be paid for as part of a joint effort with private and public dollars. I'm going to really quickly just go through these next few slides here. We did specifically, and we plan on having some discussions with the city staff who are assigned to respond to this resolution to city council. That's not really our role, but we thought because we were looking at these broader recommendations that we would want to have our thoughts laid out for this. So we include some intersection points with the resolution that passed city council last fall, including some background on the text, specifically highlighting how it pertains to planned activation and casual use. We highlight that really all of our recommendations could serve as a baseline to support the efforts that resolution asks city staff to investigate. We include some best practices from other communities. We then get into some specific pieces around planned activation, including better communication around the surrounding businesses, and especially when it comes to food-related businesses, given that there are several brick and mortar restaurants surrounding the spaces. We talk about the expansion of the social district to help cover the use of alcohol, in particular around planned events. We get into food-specific rallies and non-food events. And then again, this idea of specific strategies to handle monthly planned activations. On the casual use space, we make note of the idea of a food truck zone around Library Lane, similar to something that you saw around Cadillac Park or Cadillac Square in downtown Detroit in David's presentation, including a standard permit fee, again, for sustainability reasons and for ease of use, frankly. We noted that the farmers market has a wonderful food truck rally on certain Wednesdays throughout the summer. They have done a lot of the homework for us already, and they attract hundreds of visitors to this food truck rally each year. And we should capitalize on that. They were extremely helpful and generous with providing information. They've got a good process. We should not reinvent the wheel. And then continued emphasis on this idea around a mobile food calendar and advertising to push that information out so that people know who is coming and what vendors are going to be there and when. So, and finally, this is the last slide here. We talk about the importance of intentionality, that none of these things, even the casual use enabling, is done with intention and deliberate decision-making. And we talk about the fact that there is going to be trial and error. There's no way that any community, as David even highlighted, is going to get this right the first time. We're going to learn from it. And we're going to learn what works, what the community likes, what the community doesn't like. And that's okay. And we noted that in all of the instances that we looked at, these efforts generated considerable pride in the community, and it really united the community together. And that was shown through. It didn't matter what the terrain or the size, the shape of the park, or the open space was. The efforts were done and were popular in the community, and they brought the community together. And we thought that was a really important point, because that's really what this effort should be about, in my opinion, is bringing the community together and allowing them to be outside. And so that's the last slide in this deck. As I said, this is just a summary of that document, and wouldn't have expected everyone to read the document because we only got it out to you about 24 hours ago. and apologize for that, but wanted to kick the conversation off tonight. And so I will stop sharing this slide deck and just open it up for questions and discussion, and we will be able to continue to discuss over the next meeting or so too. So any questions at all on this piece? I see we lost Rita.
She's on her way back.
Okay. Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. I hope Rita is joining and can hear these comments. I know that she, I'm sure, has been very much engaged in the development of this document. Obviously, this is, I'm sure, a lot of work to get to this point, and a lot of research and conversations, and it's a really substantial document with a lot of good, guidance about what makes a successful space. However, it's hard for me, I guess, acknowledging all of that. There's a few initial thoughts, and I know we're not making any decisions tonight, but I guess a few cautions or initial points of feedback. We just completed our pros plan, and that provided a lot of feedback from the community about how to proceed with parks. Obviously, some of these spaces are parks, some of them are not designated as such. But one of the pieces that we know, I just got off as liaison from the Parks Commission, is that we don't have additional resources to dedicate to new spaces right now. And so we don't actually have the resources that we need to address all of our current spaces. And so that's been something that we've kind of known throughout the entire process. And so obviously the DDP presentation provided, one model that's being used pretty consistently throughout the country to provide, develop these types of spaces, recognizing when there's a lack of public resources to dedicate to that. And so I guess I'm a little questions in terms of, you acknowledged in the presentation that that is a model out there. That wasn't the model that was recommended in this, but I guess I'm curious why that was not leaned into a little bit more in this set of recommendations.
Yeah, I could speak to that too. So I think that's ultimately, I'll just speak for me on this. I think that's ultimately the key to success, especially on the transformed space. But I think that we wanted to, take these in reasonable steps. So that's part of the reason why we recommend the limited partnership, that we get things moving, build a sustainable funding model that does support some limited staff time. I think we even called out in the report, I don't know if we called out, but we were thinking it's sort of like a quarter time staff member to support, but that be in line with a fee structure that helped close that funding gap, public funding gap, as you indicated. And then, creating the partnership to coordinate the volunteer efforts and have the online portal be managed a lot by outside folks, so that we didn't have cost piece. So we thought that sort of walking across the Huron rather than jumping across the Huron might be a good model for initial success. And so we didn't get into the cost modeling around each of the events, but certainly, the highlighting of the both private and also public dollar usage around the ARPA dollars that are appropriated for Liberty Plaza was something that we were thinking of. So we feel like it's a balance. But I think that, just speaking for me, I think that the ultimate success of the center of the city is based on the idea that we will build something like a downtown Detroit partnership. Might not be as big, may not need to be as big, but we are not going to get there tomorrow, not from where we're at. And so we wanted to be successful in those efforts. So that's
Thank you. I appreciate that. A couple of other thoughts. I mean, I think there's a desire to get to some of these spaces tomorrow, as opposed to recognizing that it's going to take some time to do that. And so, for example, there was earlier, the last announcement was the exciting announcement that the private funding has been secured to do a planning process. And so I think, you know, we have some public spaces that are in this center of the city that are already activated and already being utilized, and we're trying to improve the spaces of them. And so allowing that process to move forward, that long-term planning process, would allow, I think, opportunity for those the existing space that does not have any programming on it, to perhaps for that private funding to be acquired, to be able to do those things that we're kind of seeing how these models operate in other parts of the country. In terms of the ARPA funding, I do think that it's important to note why that funding was utilized, or remember why that funding was utilized for Liberty Plaza. And that's because we were recognizing that some unhealthy activity was happening on that space that was becoming problematic for our downtown. And so there was and really wanting to turn that into a healthier space for everybody who's using it. And so that's not the same existing issue that we're seeing here on the top of the library lane surface parking lot. So in terms of intentional use of those resources, I'm not sure that that's something that's really suggesting utilizing those funds very differently than how they're currently, you know, the purpose of why they're out there right now and being used at Liberty Plaza. And then I guess another final thought is there seems to be, in terms of, it makes a lot of sense to have this very intentional marketing and branding of spaces and all that in terms of having a successful urban place. But if I look at the city's website in terms of all of the parks that we currently have, we're not having this level of intentionality about, except for with Liberty Plaza, because, and, you know, maybe in our farmers market. And so it seems to be leapfrogging over some of our existing public spaces and how we're currently operating. So I'm curious if you might be able to talk a little bit about that recommendation.
Well, certainly, I think that we support the idea. I'll speak just for me again, you know, of this type of branding be extending to a lot of public spaces. Obviously, our charge is limited to those the block bound by those 4 streets. And so, you know, we highlighted the ideas that these are all things that are best practices, you know, essentially in other communities. And so, you know, we thought that that was probably a good extension given the spaces we had purview with. And so, you know, and in terms of the ARPA fund usage too, I think one of the things that we found is, as Liberty Plaza, in fact, this was actually highlighted in the pros plan, and we raised some concern with it, that you know, as one area is activated, yes, one of the worst things we can do from an equity perspective is push people who are using the space out of doing that. And we did find that that a better way to solve that problem was to activate a larger space. And so, you know, that's part of the reason we had the thought behind extending that the funding that was already appropriated by council to Liberty Plaza over the course of the space. Was we did see, and it was highlighted in the pros plan, that people did get pushed out, and we thought that was really not in the spirit of inclusivity. And so that was sort of you know, a couple thoughts. Certainly Rita may have some others as well, and as well as others who participate in that process. But you know, that's and to your point, Eric, I agree 100% that as the development proceeds, especially with that RFP, that should serve as a real catalyst to promote private funding acquisition for these things. And so I think we're excited about that piece moving forward, not only for the spirit of it moving forward, but also because we think it will bring about more private funding too. So I don't know, Rita, you've got your hand up, but if you wanted to add anything else,
Can you hear me?
we can.
Okay, good. Thanks. Yeah, I think one of the things that I think of, first of all, is that this is a different kind of park. This is an urban park. And urban to me means that it does recognize the hardscape that exists and the intensity of use that's different, as described by the Downtown Detroit Partnership. And so I see this as a way for Ann Arbor to join itself, actually, as we become more densely populated in the downtown. I think when I spent a lot of time looking at the PROS plan this year, and or the new PROS plan that's been adopted, and we all know that the central area of Ann Arbor is the most densely populated and has the least amount of open space available to people, regardless of whether it's hardscape or greenscape. It has the least. And given that there will soon be many more units of housing nearby, and that there have been more recently, it makes sense to me to prepare for providing people with a space that is available within that 0.2 miles that David Cowan cited, and that is one that will make them want to be there together. And I think that we create the atmosphere. So that's where I would like to see this going. And yes, it is a different kind of support required, clearly, from the other parks. And I am one who loves our Ann Arbor parks. This is really a different model. And I think we're ready for it. I think the city should be ready for it. And I don't know how to be more specific than that right now, but thanks. And Adam, excellent job in writing this up. I think you did a fabulous job and good presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. Alice, and then Alan, and then Frank.
Yes, Adam and Rita have made me raise my hand because, and Erica too, it is true that the ARPA funds were offered to help resolve some difficulties at Liberty Plaza. Erica called them unhealthy activities. And I think Adam actually spoke about something that's helpful to engender healthy activities is to give more space. There isn't much space to give at Liberty Plaza, but if you can combine these properties in a systematic way, in a way that's integrated, you'll find that you have more opportunity for more inclusive activities and more opportunity for healthier activities, as they might be described, as well as the fact that we do have more and more people. We need more and more space for those healthy activities, whether there's sunbathing, reading, or playing chess, or whatever it is that we come up with and that people come up with. I think this is a great opportunity to find the benefits of intentional planning and inclusive exclusive sustainability, I guess I'd say. And I just wanted to add that I'm hearing these really good sort of interactive ideas that I think are quite like what we are intending to start with at Liberty, at the Library Lane area.
Alan, and then Frank. Alan, you are muted.
Thank you. I'm unmuted. Yeah, I think this last little question about Liberty Plaza, I just want to, almost out of order, say I'm quite distressed at the way Liberty Plaza has been addressed separate from the rest of the Commons area. and that in the alleged effort toward activism, that the tables were taken out so people can't play chess or actually have a card game or eat a lunch together there. This failure of communication between Milton Mahoney and the rest of our process is really not positive. And his approach to Liberty Plaza without regard to the rest of what's going on, I think that we should try and have a better conversation with him. Overall, my concern was that really in about the third line, this is a urban central park and a civic center commons. Civic center at least implies civic functions and a potential civic building. That whole concept is omitted here, as you have omitted the commons. This is not simply a space, call it the center of the city for convenience, but it is a way of organizing resources so that the people have a role in their allocation and in their management, different from having a staff project, which this moves increasingly toward. And that is because you call it branded as a center of the city rather than branded as the commons, which would remind us all that that is a way of organizing resources that come out of the people and the people use. And in that regard, we had the view way back when in the times of the task force that there would be multiple working groups about kids, about food, about programming, about music, about energy, and so on. And those working groups would see, well, how do we get things going there, here and there? This has all been stopped because the city has categorically refused to get the cars off. And they say partial car removal. The cars should be off. It's not a parking lot. It is a park. It has been repurposed by the people. But until it's actually able for people to begin to play around there and begin to make things happen, the working groups don't happen. And so management by default is deflected to staff. But that is not what the idea is. And that is not what is really building community. It is building that we have a staff that's going to be able to program 2,000 programs a year, or what they do in Detroit. But that's not really the idea I want to see us advancing. So, and the initiating committee is really the group designated by the city council to begin to do on the ground stuff. And that is completely omitted from this picture at all, as though it didn't exist. Probably some combination of the initiating committee and the Library Green Conservancy will become a nonprofit. But the Library Green so far has not really been looking to, assume additional functions. I hope perhaps it will. But I think in terms of understanding what is the dynamic that we need to establish, this needs to rethink the branding toward a commons and not simply the physical location, though that is what it can well be called for good reason of how the city charter is organized. And we'll have plenty of time to discuss this, but I wanted to put those initial reactions out there that this really has not been listening adequately to what is the vision here, or that we do not yet have adequate alignment of what our vision is. Robert urges us to get it all straight that we're talking about the same thing. So thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Frank?
Yes, I just want to, I think, emphasize, and I think I'm supporting what some of the comments have been made earlier, that I think for this near-term activation, as well as the longer-term planning, we need to think about all the public land on the block, Liberty Plaza, Library Lot, the Lane, Kemp House. And, the ARPA funding is sort of build a financial barrier that it doesn't, is not accessible. And my fear is that, we'll create this, this space that does, Liberty Plaza, that does push out segments of the population to other parts of the center of the city. And if funding were available, and I think a lot of the money is still available because they weren't able to hire staff, it just makes more sense from a planning perspective in this near-term activation to think of the entire space. That's my comment.
Thanks, Frank. Alice?
couldn't find my arrow. Yes, Frank, I'll second that. That's what I was trying to say, and you put it so succinctly, that I think dealing with one piece at a time will never get us across the road. And so I second your more comprehensive look at this space, because Liberty Plaza is very small. We have a little bit larger space. If we combine the efforts in any way that we can, what helps the center of the city will help Liberty Plaza and vice versa. So in Kemp House, it's a beautiful little crown on the three. So I really appreciate Frank and bring us back to the idea of what we do now will help in the future.
And just to add one piece to this too, because just in terms of the document and really our charge, which is where this document came from, our charge is to recommend things around the entire space. And so certainly when we got into this we looked at things holistically to that charge, which is where the recommendations came from. And that really feels the appropriate place from my perspective. If anything, it's to create greater continuity. That seems, going the opposite direction seems problematic. But Erica?
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate that. I understand that the idea is to, think holistically about the different spaces. I just want to, I sometimes worry that there's a piece that this commission is not acknowledging around Liberty Plaza and the activity that was happening there. And I know that there have been some disconnected conversations. And so that's perhaps why there is a little disconnect here. I've been able to sit into different conversations that, haven't necessarily been a part of this commission. So I understand to some degree that disconnect. But when I say unhealthy behavior, I'm talking about assaults and fighting and behavior that we don't want to see anywhere in the city. And that is behavior we absolutely want to drive out of Liberty Plaza. And we don't want to, it's not acceptable anywhere, honestly. So it's not that we have to, it's not about individuals. It's about behavior that we're seeing that is not the behavior that we want to see in our public spaces or private spaces for that matter. And so, I think that that's obviously why programming is something that's really important. And we know that about urban parks and spaces, but we have a pretty limited amount of funding when it comes to that ARPA that was dedicated. And so thinking about how we're strategically using it in a space that we were seeing really unhealthy behavior at times, while also trying to make sure that folks that need this also increasing the services to that space as well. So having a comprehensive look at that space, I just think it's important to acknowledge the magnitude of problems that we are seeing on one section of the center of the city space, and the reason that there's a need for additional emphasis in one corner of that. It's not about the fact that additional programming wouldn't be beneficial in many of our public spaces, but I would hope that we would all want to make sure that we're addressing that problem effectively.
Yeah, Erica, and I can't agree with you more that criminal activity like assault is not something that we're talking about here. But there is an emphasis, on some of those activations where some of the population who is experiencing homelessness in Ann Arbor used to gather at the spot at Liberty Plaza very lawfully. And during some of the activations, there's pictures of them over on the top of the parking structure in the dark, doing their normal gathering with free pizza and things. And it was because Liberty Plaza was activated at the time and they would normally be there. And so that's the kind of thing that we're talking about, and it just felt very wrong when we saw some of that. And so we tried to address the holistic nature around the activation so that didn't happen to anybody, certainly not the criminal activity or anything like that. Certainly law enforcement should take care of that and, get folks either criminally punished or the help they need, if that type of thing were to exist. So that's really the specific examples. So,
Erica, if I just might say, we were all pretty much in the dark. If those of us who were not directly involved in the addressing that Liberty Plaza situation, the assault and all of that stuff, it was like there just was not enough sharing of information, not enough extension into other conversations to figure out what the true impact was, what the true incident was. And I just feel like we can't carve out one little piece of the overall charge of the block. And actually the whole city, the whole downtown, you can't just spot check. You have to look at the whole. And obviously an incident does require a specific action or look at the situation, but I think that's that our charge is greater and not just in land use. So that's what I was trying to get
at. Rita, and then I think there are no other hands up. We'll wrap up at that point.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Alice just said. We have been disconnected from the information related to the current management of Liberty Plaza. It makes it pretty hard to do the kind of planning that we would like to do and to understand the needs that are associated. It would be great to have a report on the actions, a summary report on the actions that have been taken and the assessment of outcomes, and just to know the goals. We don't have that information. It would be very helpful to us. So I hope that can be provided to us. It should be part of what we're looking at overall all the time, I think. And so I agree that looking at it, excluding one small part is not helping us with the goal of this project. And I'm confused about that.
So
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thanks. And so I do want to just indicate, that the document is out there for discussion now. Please feel free. And we've had a couple members of the public have written in and provided feedback already, and others are more than welcome to do so. Maybe we'll take action on something here shortly related to the activation document, as a series of recommendations. I do want to just indicate, though, that I would just encourage, certainly some of the conversation, you can hear some of the frustration folks voice, all over on this. And I would really just like to indicate, to note that there's really a promising opportunity here. And a lot of the work that is reflected in those recommendations is about the promise. And we heard that from David. We saw some of the pictures of what they started with, and we're very fortunate. Frankly, we're very privileged to have a community that's not starting with the type of economic distress that downtown Detroit had. And so I would just like to. I try to always look at things optimistically, and we've had some real major wins tonight that have been highlighted, with the formal hitting of that target figure on the RFP to be issued, and really the most concrete series of recommendations we've had around activating the space. I feel like this is a great starting point for something fresh. And regardless of anyone's frustration around past instances, I would just encourage everybody to look at things with an open set of eyes, that tomorrow is different from today, and it's different from yesterday. So if we're going to think about yesterday all the time, we're never going to think about tomorrow. So let's take what we've done here and think about what could be tomorrow. So that would just be my words of encouragement for everybody.
Amen.
Very well said. Very well said.
Thanks. So with that, Erica?
Yeah, I think you were heading towards public comment.
It was.
I just wanted to, before you open that up, I just wanted to say thank you to Heather. You put in a lot of work on this commission. I know it's been very much outside the scope of your professional activities, oftentimes with the city in some respects. So thank you very much for your leadership here. And I'm excited to see what you're doing next with the Housing Commission. So thank you.
And Chris, we'll see you next time.
Yes, you will.
And
So
Heather,
you're definitely in good hands with Chris. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah.
you're good. Go ahead.
Well, and thank you for those kind words, Councilmember Briggs. Yeah, quite a meeting to go out on. There's a lot happening right now. Some really good discussion. I think it indicates that there's things that you're genuinely addressing. So I think that's good. Yeah, and again, thank you for those kind words. And I won't be far. Quite literally, I'll be working on the project quite across the street from this over at the Y Lot. So you'll find me there. And of course, I'm around, so I'm sure I'll be interacting with all of you in the future.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
When comment was made that some people have written in comments already, how do we see that? Does that get added to the minutes? Is there a note of when people write in comments?
It's actually on the agenda, Alan.
So that will come into the next agenda?
It's already on the agenda.
Hmm?
It's on the existing agenda. I'll send it to you if you can't see it. And Heather, I just want to say, I personally very much appreciate all the work that you've put in. We've had a number of conversations offline, and I think you've really done a yeoman's effort. And so thank you. And also excited that you're going to work on the affordable housing project. I think that's going to be great for the community, and certainly its proximity to this space. Everyone deserves open space. And so it's a great compliment effort, and congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I've really enjoyed working with you as well. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will go into public comment and see if there's any members of the public who are here with us this evening. We're a little over the 9 o'clock hour, but we're not too bad given our agenda. Robert Black.
All right, Robert Black.
Can you hear me, Heather?
I can.
That's probably the last time I'm going to say that, but thank you again for your kind service. Wow, you guys rock. I'm telling you, now we're talking. I've sat through hours and hours of this meeting for years, literal years now, and I've watched you guys. It's like watching sauce be made, right? It's just kind of coming in there. We keep stirring. The heat's going up a little bit, but bam, tonight you rocked it. And I'm telling you, I am so thrilled and happy to see this. I have lots of comments, but I'm not even going to say them because you're on the ball here. And the thing is to remember that you can do this. Your vision of the future is the strength of this thing. The Council of the Commons is the hub. You are the hub of this thing. Although you're a recommending body, you carry the vision. And this document that you created is so powerful. It could use an executive piece at the top that's the vision. What is this thing? What are we striving for? Inclusivity, center of the city, all that stuff. And you heard it from David Cowan tonight, how they moved through that vision, and all those burned out buildings, empty plazas, sandhill lots, and tumbleweeds are gone. And there's a new thing there, and you are on the brink of doing this. And each one of you has contributed mightily to this. And I just want to remind you that part of the process in facilitation is called commonalities and differences. Alignment doesn't necessarily mean agreement, and that you have dissenting views is important. The antipathy that comes in a dissenting view opens the possibility of growth and vision. And Adam, thank you for closing it back around the vision, because that is so important. You have examples already around you I presented something many times before about the Kaiser Center, built in 1960 in Oakland, California, a 5-story parking structure with an award-winning park on the top that has been there for how many years now? 63 years, right? And you have examples certainly from Detroit. I sent some things through. You have an underpinning in your work of the initiating committee. Count them as roots to you, grassroots. Visit, count them, don't just dissent them, count them. Their website is an example. The logo they've already created for Center of the City are part of the city. The signage and other things, the green team actually came out of that initiative. So look to them for help. They might even be that third party that can help you do things. Amy from North Carolina, myself from Vermont, another woman that has just come aboard that was one of Frank's old students at Dexter High School, was the superintendent of parks of Milwaukee, superintendent of parks of Louisville, a great resource. You have it right at your fingertips. So don't forget to use those people as you move forward in this work. And God, what was the last thing I wanted to say? I'm so thrilled and excited about this, that go ahead and practice. Do it, trial and error, make a mistake, learn, right? It's learning by doing. And so the next thing, I just pitched this one more time, one of your anchor events, we already did this in the initiating committee, an annual calendar with all the different key dates in there. You talked about aligning calendars and that. We already showed how to do that in the initiating committee. Take a look at our Trello boards and see what's there. And then think about an anchoring event is coming up in April, and it's a big one called Earth Day. And we've already got a coalition of networks working to align that around the commons. And it's going to be powerful. The bands that are playing, there's really cool bands. There's a whole bunch of different ideas of talks and things from a diverse array of topics and art activities, Mary Tiefels, chalking and other stuff. So we want to engage the whole community in a celebration leading towards a big celebration in the bicentennial year. Detroit's parks came out of that 300th birthday. Let's celebrate Ann Arbor's 200th birthday and get it rocking this year with some really, really good events. Kudos to your good work, you guys. Best of luck to you, Heather, and welcome, Chris. Let's get on with this thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Any other members of the public, Heather?
Actually can't see. I see that there's a total of 2 phone call and listeners. Chris, can you see? Oh, there we go. All right. All right. You can go ahead and speak. Person with a phone number ending in 345.
Hi, this is Kitty Kahn in Ann Arbor's 5th Ward. First of all, I want to thank Adam for his positive, optimistic words. It's so important to remember that. I heard a lot of great information tonight. I enjoyed the presentation by David Cowan, and I hope it'll be attached to the minutes so that we can go back and see that presentation. Can that be attached somehow?
Yeah. I don't have a copy of it yet, but I'll ask for a copy. And if I get it,
okay.
I'll
Great. I was also happy to read and then hear discussion about the activation recommendations. I'm really impressed by the way they incorporated the information that was gained from the site visits to successful town squares in other cities. They make perfect sense, and I hope they will enable some forward motion with the Center of the City plan. I am also very glad to hear that the Library Green Conservancy is giving more money to enable the RFP. That's great. I do think that it's important to mention that besides corporate donations, many small individual donations also were made to the Library Green Conservancy. Small donations do add up, and small donors should not be forgotten. I heard behind the scenes that a donate button will be added to a new website. I was very happy to finally learn about a donate button because that will make it easy for individuals to give money. People want to give money, they don't know how. So now, once that's up and running and it's publicized, that'll be a wonderful thing. And people can just donate with their credit cards. Lastly, I am very disappointed in Erica Briggs. Yes, Erica, once again, you put a damper on the project. Here we go. Everybody's positive, wonderful things happen tonight. And no, you have to put a damper on it. Why do you insist on doing that? It's very upsetting. That is all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Heather, any other members of the public?
I don't think so. None with hand raised. Chris, are you seeing anything different?
No, I'm not seeing.
For some reason, my visual is a little bit different tonight.
Well, in that case, we have no other items on the agenda this evening. We are a little bit over, so apologize to members of the public and all of you for not getting done by 9 o'clock. Been pretty good about trying to meet that deadline. But we are going to, would love feedback on the recommendations that were attached to tonight's agenda. Certainly you've heard some of it tonight in discussion. We will certainly figure out how we're going to incorporate different ideas and alterations. Certainly nothing is set in stone, but did want to as we have a motion for adjournment, just want to say that there is a lot of exciting things happening, and debate is good. That helps strengthen ideas. And we heard that tonight, but let's emphasize it going forward and ask that we do stay away from the personal attacks and focus on making the positive forward movement going into Ann Arbor's 200th year. So with that, Heather, we will miss you, but I'm sure we will see you again. Chris, welcome. And we look forward to working with you going forward. Can we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Always.
Thank you both. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.